Welcome back to another episode of the Miami Heat Roundtable. I'm your host, Amir. I'm joined today by Martel. You can find him at the Miami Heat Zone podcast. And we also have Trent. You can find him at the Miami Heat Network. And we have a returning special guest joining us once again. We have Nick from Chat Sports. How's it going, Nick?
Good. Appreciate you guys having me. It's been a dull off season so far. Usually, we like watching our team play right now, but it's a different story this off season.
And it's unfortunate watching Boston going through this cakewalk to the NBA Finals right now. And of course, Kyrie, who was playing really amazing, hasn't been playing that great, which happens. You could play good in one series, doesn't mean it's going to happen in the next, but kind of unfortunate right now that the Boston Celtics are up 2-0 and didn't have to go through the Miami Heat this season, which is tough. But the real Miami Heat, as I should say, obviously, playing against no Jimmy, no Tyler, or no Terry, and then also a compromised Duncan Robinson. But anyway, Nick, there isn't a lot of new news, but I do want to talk to you about the biggest thing that we're waiting on, the biggest catalyst for this offseason. I think that's the Jimmy Butler extension. And we know he's eligible for that on July 7th. And we know he wants the max. We know Bernie Lee said that he wants the max. They both want Miami, which is a good thing or a bad thing to some Heat fans. But either way, they're going to ask for it. We know Pat Riley in his presser said, we don't have to pay him now. He's under contract next year. He has that player option. So we could revisit, after next season. Let's see if he can be healthy, be available, become an all star again, and lead us to a better seed essentially in the regular season so we don't have a harder path to get to the finals again potentially. But either way, there's so many ways this can go, right? The Miami Heat can straight up possibly trade Jimmy Butler. Jimmy could request a trade. He hasn't come out with a rebuttal yet in terms of saying we're going to wait and see. The Heat can cave and just give him that 2 year extent or that 1 year extension. It's really just one more year on the contract. But either way, how do you think this whole thing's going to play out? Do you think we'll cave and give it to him? Do you think we'll actually wait? Or do you think we'll
Uh,
trade Jimmy before the season starts?
I'll say this: I don't think there's a world where they trade Jimmy this offseason. That to me just feels off the table. And I think a lot of people have made this point, and I'm kind of with them. Is like Pat Riley is 80 years old. He is not trying to rebuild. He's not trying to go in a different direction. I think he wants to try to win in the next 2 to 3 seasons so he can go out on top, one more championship with Miami. And if they want that, the best way to do that is obviously keeping Jimmy Butler. So I think if anything, they do end up extending him. That would be my prediction. Maybe that's just me saying what I would do personally as well. But I will say this is like if you extend Jimmy Butler, which I believe is the right thing to do after what he's already done for you, 5 seasons into his Heat tenure, he's taken you out of that middling ground of constantly being like the eighth best team in the Eastern Conference. You've been to the finals twice. You've been to the Eastern Conference finals 3 times. Like you have to kind of reward that. And it's only one extra year with a boost in $2 million in salary for 25, 26. To me, it's worth it. But I'd also say if you do extend him, I think it's absolutely necessary to make adjustments to this roster. And I've been saying that, but extending Jimmy and then just kind of running it back with the same group you already have, that seems redundant to me. But yeah, I would definitely extend Jimmy. I think that's the most likely scenario too, because they're just not in the business of letting star players and players of his caliber walk for nothing either.
But then Nick, like, how do we move forward with Jimmy though? Because like when you look across the NBA, you see all these other stars, Luca, Kevin Durant, and the list goes on, and they're actually out there playing. They're actually just a little bit more healthy. And the fact that don't get me wrong, it's kind of like what you said. Jimmy Butler's been great. Like I think that he's done just incredible with the roster that he's been given. But how can we really count on him, to help lead this Miami Heat team? Because I don't care, even if we do get a Donovan Mitchell, we still need Jimmy Butler to be healthy when it counts. And I know that he's going to troll during the regular season, but we cannot afford for him to troll, throughout the whole regular season, and we're losing games. Because even close like to the end of the season when he finally did come back, we were losing all these important games to Indiana, to the 76ers in the regular season right before the play-in tournament.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a concern. And to me, the best way to do it, and like this is going to frustrate some Heat fans, I think, in my opinion, but this is the way I would kind of proceed at least, is even though you are paying him that max, he's getting paid $50 million. I feel like you almost have to treat him potentially as the third option in the regular season. Now, when we get to the playoffs, I think Jimmy still got that capability of turning it on. We saw that in the first 12 minutes against the 76ers. He was clicking on all cylinders prior to the knee injury in colliding with Oubre there. So to me, like, if they do extend him, I think you need to get someone else that can carry the load with Bam in the regular season. That's always been the hope with Tyler Hero, in my opinion. It's always been like, can Tyler be that guy that's an all-star caliber player, average 25 a game? Him and Bam do most of the dirty work during the regular season on the offensive end. Jimmy can still come through in the clutch in moments throughout the regular season, but play well defensively. Had that duo with Bam on that side of the floor. But that's why we were always counting on Tyler to take that next step so he can carry the burden offensively and Jimmy could rest until the postseason, not really have to turn it on from there. So, I mean, my thing is, I just don't see a world where Pat Riley trades Jimmy because, like I mentioned, with his age, like I don't think he wants to set up his predecessor. He wants to try to win one more time, and he's obviously not going to give himself a chance to win another title as an executive in the next 3 seasons if they trade Jimmy. So to me, there's only one way this goes, and it's an extension.
Man, oh man, listen, man. What's going on, Nick? Welcome back to the stream. Well, the video, whatever. um, this Miami Heat team, I was listening to what you were saying, that Pat, he's 80 years old, he wants to win. And, those are interesting comments because, his actions haven't been telling me he wants to win. These little moves to me, I mean, like, adding Terry, adding Kyle Lowry before that, which was part of Jimmy's decision and stuff like that, These decisions haven't made this team great at all. I mean, we've been to the finals and Eastern Conference Finals appearance and all that good stuff, but at the end of the day, our goal is to win, like you said, right? And, with this roster being constructed, we're technically probably going to get worse losing Caleb Martin, possibly Haywood Highsmith, unless we get draft replacements and free agency. But when you look at free agency, there's not as great as free agent players out there, and everything has to be acquired by trade now. So that's why I'm at the point where it's like, I appreciate Jimmy. I love Jimmy. I do think we lead it out for this last season, but I'm open actually to moving to trade him. I'd rather go young. Looking at these offers, I'm sure maybe like a Golden State offer, maybe like a 76ers offer, and build for the future in the sense of getting draft capital because we're all gone with that. We don't have none of that. It feels like, and then we still have the best coach in the league, and so why not just have fun with it, getting all your draft capital, having a young player getting out of that Jimmy Butler trade, and obviously a salary filler. I see like I doubt Golden State does it, put a Kuminga, picks and Wiggins and stuff like that. I doubt they do it, but that's like a package that I'm, interested in. And then also, you keep Tyler, see what he can do. You have Jovic, you have Jaime, and all these other, and then you have picks for 2025, 2026, and wait for that star to be available because we're not going to get Mitchell. I think that's just a pipe dream. Murray's a little bit more realistic, but Trae Young, and say if we do get Trae Young and Murray, like, is that going to get you over the hump? We're relying on health and stuff like that. That hasn't very end well for us. And, I mean, you look at the Eastern Conference, I mean, you say, well, it's pretty easy, but each team's going to get better. I mean, Indiana's going to come back better. New York's going to come back healthier. And you could say we can come back healthier too, and that's a fair point, but I just don't think our roster's good enough at full strength against these Eastern Conference teams or even against the best team in Boston. So it's like I just feel like it's time to move on from Jimmy and stuff like that. But outside of that, when it comes to the draft, because that's what I'm worried about, is there any specific player that you're interested in that makes sense for the Heat at the 15th?
Yeah, I got a couple draft guys in mind,
Okay.
But before we get there, I wanted to ask you, would you take the 76ers package? Because that's at best 3 to 4 first-round picks. You're really not getting any salary back unless it's like a sign and trade or something like that. They can just soak up Jimmy's contract, and we could just get it off the books and then turn to free agency. I just don't know if I'm in to send him to Philly, though. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I don't want to send him to the 76ers.
Yeah, so great question, right? So him going to Philly is like, I think that's just more like, Jimmy, we love you. We want to do what's best for you, right? Like, I think that's what it really comes up to. If he says, I want to play for Philly, right? But I need a young player in return, and they're not giving me that young player in return. that's going to be Tyrese Maxey. You see, like, even if this, I don't even think his salaries work, but that's what I'm asking for. I need a young player in return with draft capital. I get, okay, the salaries are gone, and then we can just offload and go into, the 24, 25, 26, whatever. So I don't really want to give it to Philly because Philly doesn't deserve Jimmy. F Philly, okay?
Yeah.
F Philly. We don't need to give him. We don't need to help him and stuff like that. And just to talk about Philly real quick, even if he does go over there, it's still not going to do much. Like, let's just be honest, Joel needs to be healthy. And if he's not healthy, it doesn't matter. So I personally don't want to entertain that Philly because Philly's desperate at this point. If you notice, they want everybody just to help them out. So I'm not really interested in that Philly trade, but there's offers, and you can tell that there's teams that may be interested in, like, contenders that are like, you know what? We can give Jimmy that extension, or we'll give draft capital for Jimmy to win this championship. So I think eventually will happen. I don't think it's this season. If it does happen, that would be freaking. I think we all be shocked. But Jimmy, Pat's standing on business, and it makes sense, right? Play regular season when we need you, try, and then maybe you get what you get paid, But going back to your draft question, you can continue.
Yeah. So when we talk about the draft, like, obviously we kind of hope the pick isn't being used, right? Like, it's sent somewhere else to help win this roster if you move forward with Jimmy and Bam. But if you do pick at 15, there's different ways you can go about it. And I've been best player available. That's kind of the way I want to roll with this because the Heat have a need at almost every single position, right? You mentioned Caleb Martin and Haywood Highsmith leaving. I think both of them are gone. Caleb is for sure goner, if you ask me. Haywood, maybe there's a slight chance he can return on a $8 million contract if you have the salaries work. We'll figure out that with Andy Ellisberg and stuff like that. But you also need size with Bam behind him, potentially playing alongside him. And I still think there's some need at a shot creating guard. So there's guys at all three levels that are going to be there at 15. So whatever Pat Riley in this front office, who have done an excellent job of drafting, by the way, over the past decade, really. Justice Winslow was a tough pick, but other than that, and Precious Chua, it's been pretty solid. Like, Jared McCain from Duke is my favorite guy. I think he's going to be there. And there's a lot of these prospects that I hope are there, but that are not going to be. But McCain, 6'2", really good shooter, probably like the third or fourth best shooter in this class behind Dalton Connect, Rob Dillingham, a couple of those guys. He's fantastic. I think he'd work off ball. He could also help be our point of attack defender. We know that's something Miami struggled with quite a bit this past season, of defending and containing the dribble drive. And even with acquiring Terry Rozier, that didn't change because he's not a defensive-minded guard. He's an offensive guy. And that's the question with him and Hero. Is it always going to work defensively? But McCain can play defense. He can get in that stance. He's physical. He's quick. He's smart. He plays well off 2 feet when he gets inside the paint, which is something I really like. That's what made Jalen Brunson so dynamic in New York, is his ability to drive, play off 2 feet, hit a fader, or get you up in the air and go to the foul line. So McCain, if they want to go the guard route, my top guy that's likely to be there. A lot of Heat fans have a love for Zach Edey. I'm not a Zach Edey guy. I think that's a horrific decision if they go that way. Kel'el Ware from Indiana, someone I'm intrigued with. But if they wanted to go with Caleb Martin replacement, I think Tristan Da Silva out of Colorado would be great. Kind of similar to Jaime Jaquez, where he's an older prospect. He's 23, but he does everything right. The little things right. Can shoot the 3-ball off the catch. He's 6'8" with a 6'10" wingspan. He can defend. Like, if you wanted to strictly find a Martin replacement, Tristan Da Silva is your guy at 15 because I believe he will be there. If you want to go more upside, it's probably going to be the Ware or Jared McCain route.
Do you think that we need a point guard more so than a big? Because you said your interest is in with McCain. Do you think that's a bigger need right now versus upgrading in terms of size? We don't have really functional size that we can deal with. I know we're going to lose Caleb, most likely going to lose Haywood, unless you can convince him you're getting $10 million from whatever team. $7 million in Miami is the same after state taxes. So we have a shot, but I still think they're both going to be gone. I think we could replace those guys with a Torian Prince, a Jay Crowder, even though he's getting older. I'm sure fans don't want to hear that, but there are some Gordon Hayward, maybe there are wings that we can get for cheap. So do you think a point guard is more imperative, or do you think a big is more imperative outside of your opinion of who you like?
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing with McCain, if you wanted to go that route too, is he can play both the 1 and 2. He played the 2 primarily at Duke, but coming up as a high school, and what made him a 5-star recruit was his point guard, scoring, facilitating ability. So I think he could play both. But going back to the general question, it's tough. Like when you look at this roster, like what do they do though? Because I'm still not convinced that a Hero Rozier backcourt can work, and it sucks. I think that's the biggest disappointment of this entire season. If I'm going to be honest, is not even the fact that the Heat got bounced early in the playoffs. Like that obviously sucks. But the biggest disappointment to me is that Pat Riley finally made a trade for the first time in a long time. He makes a deal to get a guard, and we don't even see if he can work alongside your 24-year-old two guard. Like we just didn't see them play enough together and have a sample size if they can work offensively, if they can work defensively. So now you're still sitting here like, well, does that work? Does one of them need to head to the back of the bench and be a six man? Do you need more guard help? Well, one thing is clear is like, even if you look at our bench, like sure, Josh Richardson's probably going to opt in, but I like Jay Rich. Do we trust him to be the backup guard, like the main guard coming off the bench? So I think there is a need for guard too, because who's going to be the main ball handler off the bench unless you just continuously stagger both Tyler and Terry?
Hey, it's Patty Mills, of course.
Oh, that guy stinks, dude. At least
look,
in this point in his career.
Yeah, let me say something real quick. If this is how I'm keeping Haywood Highsmith, you go in the room and tell him this. Hey, look at Gabe Vincent, look at Max Strus, look at Kendrick Nunn. Look at all the players that left their team. Where are they at right now? They're nobodies. You threaten him. Well, not literally, but you get what I'm saying. You're going to be just like one of them. Because I'll tell you this, Haywood Highsmith is going to be a nobody when he leaves the Miami Heat. I promise you right now, June 10th, 2024 on a Monday. If he leaves this team, he'll be a nobody. So that's what you got to hit him with in that in the room. Simple
we don't pay, but he's not going to get paid if he doesn't leave the Miami Heat because we don't pay anybody like that.
Fine.
He's got to leave to get his bag somewhere. But go on.
Why should he get his bag, Mayor, if he sucked in the playoffs? Why should he get his bag? Because he's a wing and they need defenders in the league? Is that he sucked?
Because he's a 6'5", whatever.
That can't shoot consistently.
But he has a 6'9", 6'10" wingspan. He's a lockdown defender. Like obviously we put him on Jason Tatum and Luka, and the best offensive player typically night in and night out. He was the best point of attack defender. Caleb wasn't that great this season compared to the past. So he's a 3. He shot 40%, even though it was only one season. He's the prototypical type of wing that you need as a rotational player. Look at DJJ. Like, come on. Like, I think he's a better player than DJJ, perhaps. Like, he could shoot better than DJJ.
I'd rather have Derrick Jones Jr.
Well, we
Call
had
me
him.
crazy. Call me crazy. I'd rather have Derrick Jones. Call me crazy. Maybe.
No, I don't think. I mean, he's a free agent too. I bet Derrick Jones Jr. gets a bigger bag than Highsmith. So I think the most of the league would take DJJ. I like Highsmith, but his inability to give you anything outside of catch and shoot threes is troublesome. He kind of developed that little floater at the end of the year where he went to it consistently.
PJ Tucker, he had that little floater eventually.
He always has just been part of the PJ Tucker school, and it's what is his ceiling? I don't think the Heat are going to be willing to pay him like $9 million, which I think his market will be, by the way. So I think he's good as gone.
Think of what the Heat paid Caleb for his first actual standard contract. He got $5 million, 7 and 7, basically, right? So, do we think that Haywood is more valuable than Caleb? I don't think so. We're not going to pay him more than what we paid Caleb, right, for that contract that he got. And we know Caleb's going to opt out because he's worth more than that and more than Haywood, right? So he's expecting to get 11 to 13, perhaps. Haywood's probably expect to get 7 to 10, right? So that's the standard for a 3-and-D type player in the league right now.
So Nick, right before we close, like, what's a realistic offseason, moves, like, in terms of, because think about it, like, we're already paying Jimmy, Bam, Tyler, Terry, and Duncan, so we really don't have that much leverage in terms of, making those moves, like, unless you trade maybe 2 out of the 5. So what's a realistic offseason for you? We've seen Lauri Markkanen rumors, Trae rumors, and, DeJounte Murray, but what's a realistic move that can really help this roster just improve overall going into next season?
There's a move out there that I don't know if they want to do it, if they would do it. I've kind of come to the conclusion where if you're not swinging big, you're not getting an all-NBA type guy, which, as we've seen in the prior off seasons, it's unlikely Miami makes that big move. But there's the thing, Barry Jackson of the Herald does, like, he's mentioned this a couple of times, and I agree with him. It's a lateral move that you maybe don't get that much of a better player, but you just have a different constructed roster, different energy, different vibes into this locker room. And I think that could be, and it's crazy I'm saying this because a couple of years ago he's kind of a clown, but Kyle Kuzma from Washington, if he's available, I'm all in on Kuzma. I don't know what Washington would like in return. Maybe it's just a hero and pick swap for something like that for Kuzma. I don't know how they value Tyler, and I don't know where they want Kuzma, but it was reported that they wanted 2 firsts back in February before the deadline. You'd imagine that price tag has gone down since then. So I don't think it's going to cost you 2 firsts. But Kuzma, you talk about functional size as being a need. This dude is almost, if not the same height as Bam. And obviously he's not a center. He's not built like that, but he can space the floor. He can create his own shot. He could play that 4 next to Bam. You get to keep Jovic. Maybe he goes to the bench, and you can keep Jaquez. You either start him at the 2, which is probably a bad call just because he can't space the floor that quite yet. But you have those 2 young guys coming off the bench, and maybe you insert Duncan Robinson in the starting lineup. Maybe you deal him in a separate deal, but a 3-man front court of Kuzma, Bam, and Jimmy intrigues me because I think Kuzma, under the right system and coaching, can be a plus defender based off his athleticism and size profile. As long as he just commits to it, I think he could. And then you still have Rozier as that lead guard that can create and score. So I don't hate Tyler Hero. I like Tyler. I want him to work out. I just feel like him and Rozier being in the same backcourt is redundant at this point. I think one of them has to go to get better size, athleticism, and the wings. It's not an All-NBA guy. It's barely even an All-Star guy. It's Kuzma hits his best, but it's something that could improve this roster dramatically, in my opinion.
Yeah, he also has a better contract than Tyler Hero. So 3
it's
years,
very cheap.
65 million left on his 4-year, $90 million deal. So
it's a rare contract where it goes down by $2 million over the next 3 years. So when he's at the end of his contract at age 30, 31, assuming that he's still playing at a solid level, he's getting paid $18 million. It's just an incredible deal for Kuzma, and it would help Miami long term. And if you did want to go the extend Jimmy Butler route, but shake up this roster, trading for a contract and player like Kuzma would help you alleviate some of that cost for Jimmy.
You know what I was thinking too, also, and I've thought about this before during the trade deadline when they were asking for 2 first-rounders, which I thought was ridiculous. But what's if we had Miami Heat scrub killer last year, Corey Kispert, I think averaged 21 points per game against the Miami Heat, shooting over 40% from 3. He's only making $5 million. It's a club option, which I'm sure they want to keep him, obviously. But maybe him and Kuzma for maybe 2 players, and then maybe we would have to throw in a pick. I don't know if it's worth it, but that could help us with shooting. He's younger than Duncan Robinson, cheap contract. That would be something I'd be interested in as a sweetener.
Now, if you did get that deal done and you get Corey Kispert, which I think is unlikely because I think Washington's going to want to build forward with Kispert on that roster as their wing shooter and helping whoever they end up taking at number 2 overall. But Duncan, even though he played well and showed why he should still be a rotation player in the league and played well for Miami, I still think that it might benefit the Heat to move off of that deal with 2 years left. And I don't know if you'd have to attach a pick, but if you can just get that contract out and get a couple players in return that are just low-level role players, but equal the same salary where you're getting more bang for your buck, because even though Duncan's one of the best shooters in the NBA, still a negative defensive asset, and maybe you just want to get a couple guys back that can defend the perimeter better to help. That's the biggest question. How do you want to build this backcourt? That's the biggest question. That we talked about the Jimmy extension, but to me, the first thing you got to answer is who's going to be your starting backcourt next year. I would legitimately have no clue.
Hey Nick, you're being a little bit too nice to Tyler. You know he sucks.
I don't think he sucks.
He
he's
sucks.
Definitely had some bad moments, but
listen,
the part that he thinks about him is that he's so inconsistent at times because he showed you the flashes. Game 2 against the Celtics in the postseason was one of the most complete games I've ever seen. He facilitated, he hit big shots, he was fantastic. But then he just shows up and gives me stinkers the other 3 games. If he was consistent, it's there. The ceiling is there, but he's just not consistent enough, and he can't stay healthy.
But we've been saying this for how long now?
5 years.
I don't know. Like the first 3 seasons of Tyler were pretty awesome. He was great as a rookie. A little bit of a down second year, but then he won Sixth Man of the Year in his third year. The last couple seasons, we expected bigger growth. Yeah, but the first 3 years of Tyler were tremendous.
But
I'm
the
over.
injuries, right,
I'm,
Trent? He's the most he's ever played
yeah,
is 67
I
games.
mean,
That's the best he's ever done,
see
which is
that I
not
feel
good
like
enough.
that's not even my biggest concerns. The inconsistencies. I think the injuries will probably be my biggest concern too, because he's so young. His body's breaking down so early. I mean, like we can complain about Jimmy's injuries and whatever, but Tyler's young and he's just breaking down. Like I don't think he can ever play a 75 game season. I don't think he can.
That's the annoying thing about the hero. Like, yeah, he's injury prone, it's proven, but some of the injuries he sustained are such fluke things. Like he misses 15 to 20 games with a sprained ankle because he just happens to come down and roll it on someone's ankle. He
But you know
breaks his
why?
hand in the. Go ahead.
But you know why, Nick? Because his skill set is not the greatest. If you notice, his skill set is fadeaway threes, contested shots, and a floater. That's all he does. His skill set is like he doesn't attack the free throw line, so he's doing a floater. Floaters, you're always gonna land on your ankle every single time. If you play ball, you shoot a floater, you're falling on ankles. That's his game. He got to change it up a little bit.
Yeah, but you named 3 things. He's trying. You think like did Shaq
What do you
have
mean
a
he's
freaking-
trying? The
Well, I'm
dude is
just
a
saying,
freaking
some people have only 1 to 2 moves in their bag, and they're
He-
superstars.
bro. He's
Come on.
making all this money in the world, and he can only have 3 moves. Unacceptable. Come on. And you know that, Amir. You know that. There's no
No,
arguing
but
with
Trent,
Tyler.
no. Listen, but
Stop
this
it.
really all comes down to roster construction because when you really look at the roster, think about it. Okay, like if you know that Tyler Hero can't play defense, why would you go get Kyle Lowry and put him next to Tyler Hero? That makes
I'm not
no sense to
arguing
me.
that.
No,
I'm not
what I'm
arguing
saying is that this organization has failed to put high-level role players that complement Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler, and that's exactly what we're going through right now. We've had a 6'5" power forward for since like the bubble. Because outside of Kelly Olynyk, we really had no bigs on this roster. Yes, Kevin Love is great, but we can't count on him to play 82 games. I just think that we need better high-level role players to complement Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler. And unfortunately, we haven't been doing that.
Yeah, but you're saying all this is never gonna happen. So we gotta deal with what we gotta deal with. That's never gonna happen. Unless if it doesn't happen this season, when is it gonna happen? When is it
you're
gonna
right.
happen?
No, you're 100% right. But like in terms of trading Tyler, they're not gonna trade him like unless it's for somebody where not necessarily like a Hall of Famer or like all this other foolishness that they were saying, but it has to make sense. They're
But
not
more
just
chill.
gonna just move off of him.
Let me say this: the truth of the matter is, they put an investment into a young guy. It's like you put money into a stock, you want it to grow. Their investment has failed. It hasn't worked out. It's really just simple as that. So you keep pushing it. Oh, it's gonna eventually work. It's not gonna work. You got to move on from it. It's really just simple as that. So you can look at the front office, you can look at Jimmy, but also everybody has a part in this. And Tyler has a part for just not being consistent and always being injured when we need him the most. Jimmy has a part. Spo has a part. Everybody has a part into this. I'm not singling Tyler Hero out, but I'm just saying Tyler is a big factor because if we want to trade for a big 3 and get Mitchell, we should already have our big 3 with Tyler, Bam, and Jimmy if he just plays consistently, right? And Jimmy tries. I mean, that's the fair point right there. So it's just like that's why we're always asking, okay, what's the next thing? Like it should already be on the roster. It should, but it just didn't end out that way. So get them off my team. And like you said, Nick, Terry and Tyler is not going to work out. And so you're telling me, right? You go into next season, they hardly play together, and you go out there next year and say, okay, let's put them in the starting lineup. You know how long it's going to take for them to get that correct again? So now we're already back. We're already set back because of injuries with Terry and Tyler. So they have no chemistry together. And when they did play, you could tell that they can't really play that well together because they both need the ball in their hands.
Well, guess what we can do? Come February, we'll see how that backcourt duo works. Neither are true point guards. There's not a lot of true point guards out there right now that are available. But if Tyler's stinking up the joint, if he's hurt again, guess what we could do? There's a trade deadline. Maybe a Tyus Jones is available. Maybe
Please
someone
no.
that's like more of an actual floor general that, then Terry could play off ball. He could play the 2 guard or combo guard. We'll see. So there's always an option. We'll see what happens. We have a whole lot of offseason left. So draft is coming up soon. That's going to be something to look out for next. Obviously, July 7th, Jimmy's contract extension eligibility and free agency in July as well. So thank you again, Nick, for joining the show. Do you want to let the audience know again where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm on the Heat Report by Chat Sports. It's a YouTube page, over 11,000 subscribers at this point. Yeah, or follow me at Twitter at Nick_Roloff. Appreciate you guys for having me. It's always fun talking some Heat basketball. Two-time returning guest. How about that?
Thanks again, man. Really appreciate it. Martel, any last words for you?
Yes, make sure you guys like, share, comment, subscribe, and thank you for the support.